Hello, everyone. This is how we know we're live. We're so glad you stuck around through our tech glitches, and we're very, very happy to be here. I'm happy to introduce you to 3 amazing musicals and 6 amazing writers. This is now our 7th week-long retreat out of 9. And I just wanted to say that you'll be hearing from each team individually, and all of the writers will come back to respond after each musical is presented. And please include your questions in chat, and we will try to include all the questions as well to our writers. Each of these writers had 1 week. They focused solely on writing their musical. You'll hear later from Lynne, Shankel, and Sara Cooper, who are working on Perpetual, Sunshine, and the Ghost Girls. At the end, you'll hear from our writers in residence right now, Dan Mertzliff and Kate Leonard. So we'll say goodbye to them now, and we'll say hello to Kira Obolensky and David Darrow, who were up in Rhinebeck a few weeks ago for their week-long retreat, working on 4 measures. And where are you now?
We're in Minneapolis. Actually, you're in St. Paul.
We're just across the river from each other in Twin Cities.
Oh, great. Good. So tell us about 4 measures. What inspired you? Tell us about it first, and then what inspired you.
Well, it was a commission from a really terrific local theater company called Trademark. And the very innovative people who run that, Tyler Michaels King, had an idea. He had heard about this crazy doctor in the turn of the 1900s who was trying to weigh the human soul, and he thought it would be a great musical. And so he put David, who is a fantastic talent in town, together with me, and we've been working on it for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, that was in 2019, I think early 2019.
Yeah.
So we've been collaborating since then.
And tell us about where it's set and who the main characters are.
Yeah, so the show sort of takes place historically in as Kira said, the turn of the 20th century. We've sort of taken it a little bit outside of that sort of era. It doesn't feel exactly like we're in 1906, but the story took place in 1906, and essentially what happened was this doctor, right at a kind of a suburb of Boston, at the height of sort of a tuberculosis outbreak, decided that he wanted to weigh the human soul. And the way he was going to do that is that he took people very, very close to death who were dying of tuberculosis, put them on a scale, and posited that when they died, the soul would leave the body and the body would lose weight at the moment of death. And it's where we get the 21 grams, the idea that 21 grams is the weight of the soul. It came from this experiment, because one time he did it, it worked, and he believed for a small amount of time that the human soul weighed 21 grams. And so our story, we were writing this sort of pre-COVID originally. We did not, intend to write this during a pandemic, but the story took on a ton of new meaning, as we sort of confronted as a society, how do we face sort of the unimaginable, or how do we face mass death, at a scale that we've sort of not seen before, and how do we as individual people sort of respond to that kind of trauma, and what do we sacrifice of ourselves in those difficult moments. And so that's sort of the place where we've kind of the trajectory the show has taken at this point in a post-COVID universe.
And tell us about, I remember when we talked about it when you were in Rhinebeck, you really started shifting the story away from the doctor and towards the nurse. Tell us about that transition.
Well, I think David and I always wanted that nurse to be the center of the story, and we just really hadn't quite. I think we hadn't quite started her in the right place for her to launch and to take prominence as the protagonist. So in Rhinebeck, we really had an amazing, I have to say, we had an extraordinary week where we were really able to see what was working in the previous draft and really be sort of brutal about what wasn't. So Lucy Starling is the nurse, and well, first of all, the doctor's such a crackpot that, I mean, he's interesting to watch, but I think we both felt we wanted a protagonist who was likable and who was like us in the audience, someone who wanted to possibly help. And so she just sort of came into focus more, I think.
So that leads to our first song, which is a song that Lucy sings, I guess, towards the beginning of the musical.
Yeah, this song. So this is one of the pieces that we sort of reworked at Rhinebeck. So we got there, and like the whole week was worth the one storyboard that we made. I mean, we were able to really kind of like look at the piece, like Kira said, and kind of be brutal about things. And this song, in the original draft, it occupied the same space. It didn't move, but it's been pretty significantly rewritten since our version. And some of these lyrics are still in the play. Some of them have been sort of removed since this demo was made. But essentially, this is Lucy's arrival at the ward. She has been kicked out of the convent where she was a nurse novitiate. She was kicked out because she held a seance in the chapel to conjure the spirit of her dead friend, which Mother Superior did not appreciate. And so she has recently arrived at the ward of the last gasp as punishment. And what she finds is a doctor who might be a little more interesting and a little more sort of compelling than the life she left behind. And maybe she wants to be there. So yeah, this is called More.
Mother Superior lectured and scolded, prayer after prayer, 7 hours a day. You keep your head bent and you keep your hands folded. Nothing distracting should get in your way. It wasn't much fun, I wasn't much good. That crusty old nun was tougher than wood. I tried to be small and do what I should, but I wanted more. We prayed for the patients at Boston St. Lizzie. We prayed for the doctors, all giving them care. It bored me to tears, so I kept myself busy, talking to strangers I'd meet on the stair. They'd tell me their name, I'd ask how they were, then they'd do the same. We'd stay and confer. It took just a minute, but friendship occurred. And I wanted more. Everything's interesting if people are interesting. God, I can't get enough, I just want to know everything. God, the way to the soul, what an excellent question. Our work's so important, it calls for discretion. And maybe it's only his latest obsession, but finally I'm not on my way to confession. There's more, finally more. Mother Superior asked what I wanted. I'd come from the chapel, the end of the night. She's nearly 100 and looks like she's haunted, but I had to admit that I knew she was right. I didn't fit in, and she knew it too. For life to begin, I'd need somewhere new, and it might be a sin, but I'm glad she came through and sent me out looking for more. Solve all its mysteries. The wind as my wandering guide. The wonders, the people, the histories. to know at the end, at least I have tried to speak in a language I had to learn, to leave something precious behind, to notice the trees as the seasons turn, and let very good arguments open my mind. Just give me a story of terror and glory, and give me a wide open sky, or a temple of death where they're gasping for breath, and a doctor whose aim is impossibly high. Mother Superior set an example. Find inspiration or be on your way. The world is so wide, I was longing to sample. I know I just got here, but I think I might stay.
That really shows that Lucy is in agreement with the doctor at that point in the play. She's excited to be there. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about her role with the patients and their role in the musical.
Well, the patients are, we have three, actually that shifted at Rhinebeck too. We have sort of three primary people we track, and we're of course looking at their last moments of death. I should also say this play is funny. It is not simply death and gloom, but there's a lot of humor in it too. But we have three patients, and I think that Lucy learns a lot from intersecting with them, and that helps her kind of figure out where she's going next.
But you won't tell us. Is that a surprise?
I'll say one of the major things we discovered at Rhinebeck was, we made these sort of like a couple of like just huge story changes while we were there, and one of them was we felt like the play needed, basically in our first draft, the doctor was this monster. He kind of was the monster of the story. And what we sort of had decided was he needed to start as a human being because it gave him somewhere to go, and it helped us actually root for him and made it much more tragic when he sort of can't leave this obsession behind. And so instead we needed a different monster, basically. And so we made this scene where they're constructing the scale, where they're going to weigh all of these dying people. And the scale, we decided, is going to sort of like live in the back of the stage and kind of loom over the patients in the ward as this kind of mythical dragon kind of creature. And one of the patients, sort of the new patient that we've come up with, is this kind of crazy lady that everybody thinks is kind of off her rocker, who is sort of obsessed with this dragon that we literally see sort of come to life behind us, or behind the patients. And at the end of the story, we sort of get to see someone slay the dragon and destroy the scales, and it sort of comes to symbolize the fall of the doctor who, couldn't let this thing go. And so that was sort of the major shift we made at Rhinebeck. That was not the play at all. That's
exciting. So, Kara, you told me too that you decided to go much back in time, much further back in time, because you thought it was interesting to show Lucy's progression.
Yes, I think we discovered we really were starting in the wrong place. So we start right now. The action of the play starts in that seance, as David said, before she is sent to the sward of the last gasp. And similarly for the doctor, we felt like his journey started too soon in a previous draft. So we backed it up a little bit so that we could see him deal with the loss of his own brother from consumption. It helped humanize the doctor and make us understand, I think some of the psychology of where the obsession comes from. So we shifted it. That doesn't happen very often. It's really a great discovery.
I don't think I've ever heard of that happening. So that's
I know.
And you said you also made discoveries about the set and how it's going to. Was that the dragon? Was that the?
Yeah, and also how it lives on. How the play is going to live on space.
Tell us about that.
Well, the scale itself was very large.
We sort of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You
Go ahead, David.
Sorry, you go ahead, David.
Yeah, so I think we're going to say the same thing. The scale is sort of huge, and we had before had sort of had a hard time picturing exactly what happens in these moments where somebody's like wheeled on stage and gets put on this giant contraption, and then everything has to kind of go away. It was very kind of clunky, and Kira was also very adamant that we keep in mind the doubling and sort of how are we going to do all of this sort of gracefully and thoughtfully. And I think early on had been like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Well, it sort of totally came time to figure it out. And we spent some time that week at Rhinebeck figuring out how to double the cast in a way that made sense and how to have them sort of on stage in a way that they didn't have to track on and off, and that it wasn't just going to be like a director's nightmare the whole time. And so, yeah, the whole play, I think, takes place kind of in front of this monster that looms behind them. And it should give the piece a good sort of sense of foreboding, and that we can feel kind of the imminence of death for everyone who kind of lives in that space. Again, as Kira said, it's a comedy for a lot of it. So we can fight against the instinct to make it a dirge, but yeah, that sort of looming sense should be there most of the play.
Well, that's a good segue into our final song that we're going to show, which has to do with dealing with death. And tell us about the final song that we're going to hear.
Sure. So this is called "Not Today." It's one of the patients. So in our original draft, this version, this song took place sort of halfway through Act 1. It now occupies sort of a much more important function in the show. This opens Act 2, and this is the patient that now escapes at the end of the play. He sort of makes a promise early on in this song that he's not going to die in this place. And as sort of Lucy's last act before she leaves the ward and abandons the doctor, she helps him destroy the monster, destroy the scales in the back of the room, and sort of walk out into the sunshine and die somewhere else essentially. But he doesn't have to do it in this sort of terrible place. And so his name's Adam. This is his sort of anthem. It's called "Not Today."
It's the smell of Armageddon in the morning. It's the way the doors swing in and out the same. It's the never-ending night and these walls are white, and how the doctors never learn your name. It's the melancholy moping of the patients. It's the doom and gloom you hear from every nurse. It's the agonizing screams that haunt your dreams, how your friends are always leaving in a hearse. If I'm going, then I'm going beneath the sky. If I'm going, then I'll give the earth a proper kiss goodbye. 'Cause I'm not dying in here, not today. I'm not dying in here, not today. I'm not waiting around for Jesus. They can keep the chaplain's pay. 'Cause I'm not dying in here, not today. It's the way the city glistens from the rooftops when the sun's only barely on the rise. It's how morning always comes, even in the slums, a perpetual surprise. It's the thought of what is coming round the corner, all the answers that we're just about to find. I'm not missing anymore, I'll bust the door. I'm not sitting here resigned. If I'm going, then I'm going beneath the sun. If I'm going, then I'm going at a full sprint, all out run. 'Cause I'm not dying in here, not today. I'm not dying in here, not today. And I know it's not forever, no, this is the death, the undignified death the poor can afford. Aren't you angry? Aren't you enraged? Instead of on top of a mountain, they ask us to die, ignored and encaged. Aren't we forgotten in here? Aren't we forgotten in here? If I'm going, then I'm going neath the rain, neath thunder, rage, and water on the plain, out beneath the crushing of a wave. Let the mighty ocean rock me to my vast and joyful grave. But I'm not dying in here, not today. I'm not dying in here, not today. I don't care if I get better or what the goddamn doctors say. I'm not dying in here, I'm not dying in here. Today, not today, not today.
So Dan and Kate, any questions for Kira and David?
I
Lynne and Sara.
so enjoyed those. Like, we didn't get to hear them at soundcheck, so it's fun to like actively hear them. But I have a question about like the musical language, because I loved both of them. But the nurse/nun's music, was that like inspired by like the church modes and like all that stuff? I loved the harmonic language of all that stuff. It was fascinating. And like, does that carry throughout the show for themes and stuff for her?
Yeah, so her theme is sort of the end of that tune. That is sort of, her whole journey is sort of about escaping and sort of being free and sort of being able to sort of be whatever she wants to be in the world without kind of the oppression of. First, it starts off as the church, and then it becomes sort of the opposite of the church, it's science and medicine, and which is very male heavy and male dominated. She's all sort of tamped down the whole show. And finally, she sort of escapes, and so her theme is this sort of very kind of explosive, emotional thing. And then her tune is really modal. It's there's definitely a lot of kind of unusual harmonic things happening, and I hopefully it feels because this is a totally different environment. I mean, she's sort of grown up in a as far from science and medicine as you could be, and she's training to be a nurse, but through the lens of a nun, and so this is a brave new world.
Loved it. I love mode, so I was very excited.
Thanks.
And Lynne, I think Lynne or Sara, did you have a question?
Well, just that I did that the second song, the chorus in that second song is so hooky. It's so incredibly catchy. It's still in my head. I'm not dying here, not today. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks.
I just love how earnest the characters are. It was like, it's so sweet and fun to watch.
So great. Well, what one of our listeners, Kathleen Crampton, said, so timely, which is true. Maybe before we say goodbye, can you tell us where the humor is?
Well, it's kind of everywhere. It's in a lot of the songs, and I think it's in a lot of the way. Like, we have this great kind of opening number where everybody's kind of fetching about dying. So there, I'm dying too. I think we're trying to, I guess death is sort of like birth in a way. It's a passage, and there are things we never really look at, not in our lives or in the theater. And so I think we are trying to humanize death, if that makes any sense. So comedy comes from that. Comedy comes from the nurse, who I think is quite hysterical, and there's nuns.
I also think the premise of the whole show, yeah.
The premise of weighing souls.
It's absurd. I mean, that was sort of the entrance into this whole world, but the story is so absurd And so, it really lends itself to comedy in a major way, especially since, especially back then, he took himself 100% seriously. And so I think anytime you're watching somebody who takes himself 100% seriously, there's good opportunity for comedy. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to say goodbye to Kira and David and Kate and Dan right now, and they'll all be back. And we're going to talk with Lynne Shankel and Sara Cooper about Perpetual Sunshine and the Ghost Girls, which is a very female-centric musical and all female identifying cast. Tell us about that.
It is.
Yeah, it's actually a sister piece to our.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, we're having that same lag. You go, Lynn. Go ahead. You go.
I think where Sarah just left off. We wrote another piece together called that's a contemporary feminist retelling of Helen of Troy. It's called Hot, and this piece is actually a sister piece to Hot, in that both pieces are written for a complete female identifying cast. So it's a women play all the roles, whether they are men or women, like reverse Shakespeare.
And tell us what the premise is.
Sarah, when do you pick it up here?
Well, it's sort of it's about the capitalist exploitation of workers' bodies and rights in the face of a national public health crisis, just like the one that we are facing now, unfortunately. It features an original 1920s, 2020s mashup score, and it's based on the true story of the women who worked in the factories and were knowingly poisoned by the United States Radium Corporation. And it's really interesting because this is something that changed labor laws forever in our entire country, and neither Lynn or I had ever heard of it until a couple of years ago. And now it seems like it's in the zeitgeist, but it's based on a true story of these very brave women who changed all of labor laws and sort of got completely lost in history.
And
so tell us about Marie, the main character. Oh, sorry, Lynn. There's a lag. So tell me what you were going to say.
I was just gonna say that so the women, just for anybody who doesn't know what this is about, the women who worked in the U.S. radium factory in the early 1920s, what their job is they painted the faces onto watches with radium paint. And at this point, when it began, nobody knew that radium could kill you. And it was, I believe that they started doing this during World War I, painting the faces on watches because the soldiers could see the radium paint in the dark. And so it helped in the war effort. And then it became kind of a craze. Like radium, everybody thought it was cool and that the glow was cool. And so radium was put in bath products. It was put in makeup, in all kinds of beauty products. It was kind of like, I guess in a way, like the 1920s version of Botox. It was like the big craze. But these women within the factory, they didn't know that it was poison, and the way that they were taught to paint the faces onto the watches was to lick the tip of the brush so that they could get a fine point. So they were unknowingly poisoning themselves, with every stroke. Happy.
Ended up with these horrible.
Well, tell us about your main character, and get us into our first song.
Absolutely. So our main character is her name is Marie, and Marie is a real is a woman kind of ahead of her time. She's a real go-getter, and this first song is called "The Music of Tomorrow." It takes place right after we meet Marie. She goes into work for her first day at the factory. She's met everyone. She's had an amazing day. She goes home to tell her mother about it, and Marie's biggest dream is to become the manager at the factory, to be in management at the factory. And she tells her mother that she's going to be a manager someday, and her mother says, well, you should marry a manager. And that's where our song picked up.
They call it
Another song. Hold.
We'll hear that one after.
Take two.
You don't hear me when I tell you who I'm gonna be. You don't even hear a word. You don't believe that soon the world is gonna change its tune. But that's just because you haven't heard. I wanna scream and shout all the things that can't be said. I've gotta let it out, 'cause it's been stuck inside my head. The music of tomorrow is being written today. The music of tomorrow is almost ready to play. And the sweet song of me is gonna ring out loud and free with all the voices in the women's chorus. And no one will be able to ignore us. The music of tomorrow. Listen closely, I don't wanna miss a single beat. My heart is in my throat, I'm singing loud and clear, and I play it all by ear. 'Cause I'm gonna hit the highest note. Curtains are rising now, and I wanna play my part. No compromising now, 'cause it's played in my heart. The music of tomorrow is being written by me. I'm rising to the top of that factory you'll see. And once one of us breaks through, think of all that we can do with all the voices in the women's chorus. 'Cause no one else is gonna do it for us. No waiting for a man who'll leave us helpless and alone. We're changing the keys and writing songs of our own. The music of tomorrow is loud and strange. I'm here to sing my solo, the voice of change. Sorry that I'm not a nice young lady, but desperate times call for the truth. The world is expanding to include us, mama, and I'm gonna be the living proof. I'm sorry you weren't a part of something new. I'm sorry for all the things you never got to do. I'm sorry, but I'm desperate not to be you. The music of tomorrow was being written yesterday. I wish that the whole world could hear the things you had to say. And the sweet song of you and all the other women too, whose voices weren't heard, who time has left behind. I hope that somehow you will find yourself in the music of tomorrow. The music of tomorrow. The music of tomorrow.
No, she's such a great character. She's so positive and inspirational. So tell me, when you were doing your research on US Radium, what did you learn in terms of what the corporate bosses knew and the timing of that?
Oh, that's the thing that really compelled us to write this, is that we found out that they actually knew from a very early report, like years before it came out. They had people come in to do an inspection because people were getting sick. Women were getting sick in the factories, and they completely changed. They actually literally changed the report before they're sending it off to the paper. It's to the paper in New Jersey that published the report. So they knew for a long, long time before they took any action. They didn't protect these women at all. They let them all get completely, like, just unbelievably sick. Everybody who worked in these factories who was doing this lick thing with actually died before they were even able to bring it to trial. It's like a very tragic story.
It was several years, right? They knew for several years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And tell us about the other women and how they interact with Marie, because she's an ambitious character.
Sorry, I couldn't tell if Lynne was saying something. I will say something.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh,
Lynne, you're muted.
Apologies. I'm sorry.
Now we hear you.
Sorry about that. Momentarily muted. The other characters, go back and forth between, rallying around Marie and rallying around a supporting character, Grace, who really begins to, she gets very ill, and she begins to really rile up the other women and put together a class action lawsuit. So, Marie gets to the point where, it's doing, it's realizing that her ambition may be at odds with the truth of the situation, and and that's really her conflict through the show.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Want you to? Oh, go ahead, Sara. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, Marie, our protagonist, is actually our only fictional character. The other women are sort of based on the real women who brought this class action lawsuit to come to pass. But they also, in our show, they function as sort of an ensemble that goes between women in the factory and sort of like these not narrator in the traditional sense, but sort of characters who are bringing us through this morality tale of sorts.
And the men, they play the men in the factory too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they play everyone, and we call them the Ghost Girls.
Yes, your title is so paradoxical, because Perpetual Sunshine sounds so happy, and the Ghost Girls gives you a sense of what's coming.
Yeah, well, Perpetual Sunshine is actually the name of one of the real radium products that existed, and the Ghost Girls is something they used to call these women who worked in the factories because they glowed from working with this horrible product, the radium, but it was considered glamorous at the time because they didn't know it was dangerous.
And they made cosmetics, literally made cosmetics and sold them.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a good segue to our next song. Do you want to set that up for us?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is our opening number, so literally curtains up, you see this. And this video is actually made by Baldwin Wallace and Victoria Bussard and Matt Weber, and they're wonderful students. They did a really great job. They did it in collaboration with the Beck Center earlier this year.
In Cleveland, Ohio, right?
Yeah, and they were all wonderful. That was a great experience, and they made this beautiful video for us.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and the students are so talented. And Matt Webb, their music director, did all of the video editing on this, and so this was all recorded during the pandemic. So we obviously weren't there when they did this, and I sent Matt my demo, and all of the women recorded, and they made this beautiful video, and Vicki directed it, and we're so grateful. We love it.
Great. Here's Perpetual Sunshine.
They call it perpetual sunshine, bottled attraction, chain reaction, a cure for the living dead. That's what the advertisement said. Where's that shimmer coming from? All that glitters is radium. You are positively glowing, a beauty in your prime, a star never even knowing your fall is all through time. Preserve your youthful appearance. Look how it twinkles. Who would notice wrinkles when you're shining from within? Never dull and always thin. A household name that's all the rage. A promise that you'll never age. You are positively glowing, a beauty in your prime, a star never even knowing your fall is all through time. Radium powder to brighten your skin, radium lipstick for a sparkling smile, radium cream for a sheen that would win all the hearts your smiles might fail to beguile. Bedazzled with radium butter, sparkling radium cigarettes, anointed with radium water, no doubts and no regrets, because the Great War is over and we're still standing tall, and in this bright new tomorrow, the most coveted thing of all. For any pretty young woman to climb up several social notches is to get a job in the factory, painting faces onto watches with radium, radium, radium. We are positively glowing, each a beauty in our prime, a star never even knowing our fall was all through, fall was all through, fall was all through. Tick, 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 tick. The factory, shiny and new. New Jersey, 1922.
Short because it's a through composed piece. Tell us during your week in Rhinebeck, what did you do? What did you achieve with your musical?
What didn't we achieve? we wrote 3 brand new songs in a week.
We retooled the first 20 minutes of the show, reordered things, made some cuts, rewrote. Oh my goodness, we did so much work. We rewrote chunks of of 3 other songs besides the 3 new songs.
Yeah, 3 new songs, a whole bunch of chunks, cut the first section, and finished the entire draft. So thank you very much. This was very productive.
Yes. Thank you, Rhinebeck.
Well,
Thank you.
why don't we're yeah. You're welcome. So we're going to bring back our writers now and to see if they have any questions for Sara and
Yeah, first of all,
Lynne.
that video was so cool. The lipstick, the design, all of that was awesome. I'm actually wondering, since I didn't realize that so many of your characters were based on real specific individuals, what is that research process like to reflect the actual lives of people who there's some historical record for?
So sadly, there's not as much information on these women as you want there to be, because they were just regular women who died in their 20s in the late 1920s through the very, very, very early 1930s. So there's very little actual information on them. So we ended up sort of fictionalizing a lot of this. But we did try to take from what we were able to glean of like what might have been the lives of women at the time.
Yeah, the details,
And
the
there was a
details
quote-
of their
there-
stories
oh, go
are
ahead, Lynne.
the details of their stories are things that were created, for the show. But the facts of the bigger story are what the facts are.
So we're trying to honor them, and hopefully
And I
we
just
did
have
that.
to say, the radium chords, like after they say we paint the faces with radium, I'm obsessed. I was like, I need to see the show right now. So good.
Thanks, Dan.
Yes. And David and Kira, any comments, any questions?
Yeah, I mean, the music is so beautiful. I especially like that first anthem. I mean, just it's so huge, and that video really, you get such a good taste of what the show would sort of feel like, and then I sort of echoing what Dan said about the sort of production of that video is so cool, and that song is so creepy, and really sets you right kind of in this world where things look on the surface like they're all fine and actually kind of beautiful, and underneath it's all kind of rotten. So really, really cool and super compelling.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
I think that opening number does such a fantastic. I love how the opening number does such a fantastic and efficient job of giving you like astonishing amounts of information and really also raising dramatic questions. I've always loved this story. I've always been, as a playwright, been interested in this intersection of kind of environmentalism and the human toll, and the way corporate America has eaten up, in particular, women, I think, in our past. But my question actually is a little bit connected to an earlier one about Marie, and how was it freeing to have someone at the center who was fictional, completely fictional? Because I often find it's often easier to make someone up. I'm just curious about that.
I think absolutely, yeah. We didn't. Again, we really wanted to honor these people who really did the work. So we wanted our main character to end up. She sort of goes through this journey where she accidentally becomes incredibly selfish in trying to achieve what she thinks is a goal for the greater good. And we didn't want to put that on any of the women who really existed, who really did this amazing thing and like worked through all this horrible treatment. So in having a fictional character, we were able to let her really get like sort of rock bottom, and then still honor the women who actually really did the good stuff.
That's cool. Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to say goodbye to Lynne and Sara. Thank you so much, and David and Kira. And we'll say hello to our team in residence this week at Rhinebeck Writers Retreat. Yay! Hello, Dan Mertzliff and Kate Leonard, working on a musical comedy. So different from the other two musicals. Yeah, tell us about Fashion
Show is a contemporary musical comedy that's completely an original story, new characters, based loosely on elements of my, and to a lesser extent Dan's, high school experience, but with a completely invented plot. So character elements might be taken from our lives. And it is a somewhat farcical story about three teenagers who come up with a fashion line that they sell as haute couture from this fictional invented designer. And the lie gets bigger and bigger as the fashion line gets bigger and bigger, and they have to deal with the consequences of this absurd thing that they've built.
So why do they have to? It's your character Austin who plays the fictional person, right? So
Yes.
why do they have to lie about him?
Yeah, so our three main core, we have Sadie Pemberton, who's our rich girl. We have Austin, who's the incredible fashion designer, and we have Henry, who is the business person. So together, Sadie's having her big 16th birthday party, can't figure out what to wear, and hires the weird kid to secretly make her the dress. And instead of being honest and telling everyone that it was Austin, she makes up this fake designer and says, hey, I have money, you have talent, Henry has business skills. Why don't we make this fake person a reality? Which seemed like a good idea at the time. And then turns out to be maybe not the best idea.
So tell us about, there aren't too many adult characters in fashion show. Tell us about Dee Dee and lead us into what you did for Dee Dee this week.
Totally.
Yeah, so coming into this week, we had only 2 songs, and so we were really excited for the opportunity to write more. And one of the ones that we were really set on writing while we were here is a song for Austin's boss at the boutique where he works after school, who's this character named Dee Dee, who is over-the-top theatrical, kind of a fun, ridiculous sort of person, someone you'd love to know, but might also find kind of frustrating. And the thing that she does that really stands out is that she is constantly going on dates and changing the way that she presents herself completely depending on who she's going out with. So if she is going out with a pastor, she goes out with a pastor in one scene. She's wearing a very formal church. We wanted to write a song where she sort of gives her philosophy of dating, which is if they're not going, if you want to attract a man, you should give him exactly what he's looking for, and then you can slowly peel away the layers and reveal who you actually are, and hopefully he'll, fall for the ruse and fall in love with you by accident. Which is terrible advice.
And the kids are very aware
Yes.
that this is horrible advice. But it was really fun because it takes place in high school. It's a very contemporary show. I mean, it takes place, now. All the student music is very contemporary, very pop based. So we were like, hey, this is a singular song that an adult sings. Why don't we completely go in a different direction? And because it is a musical comedy to, pay tribute to some of those old style musicals. So this is something that we wrote this week and finished about 2 hours ago. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be the very, very first performance of this tune. And just so you know, Dee Dee.
Yes.
And then I will be playing both the boys who are very concerned about this advice, and then also the ensemble that comes to life. So you have to imagine there's 40 of me doing harmonies, not just what I'm doing. And in reality, this would be 8 minutes with a dance number, and all the guys that she's talking about would come on stage. But for today, you have the piano and us.
Yes, this is a taste of what the full song will be. If you're pining for a guy and you want to catch his eye, you've got to tailor to his taste. If you're dreaming of a man, but you haven't got a plan, you've got to tailor to his taste. If failing to capture his interest has laid your pride to waste, then adopt the traits of the girls he dates. Gotta tailor to his taste.
That sounds like a terrible plan.
It's brilliant. Jedediah had the charm and a little family farm that could use a woman's touch. So I donned a simple frock and I lingered by his flock with Bible for a clutch. For one clandestine buggy ride, I was reverent and chaste. But I'm all alone 'cause he saw my phone. Gotta tailor to his taste.
And how did that work out for you?
The coyote loved to hang with his whole entire gang, burning up the 43. But a studded leather vest and tattoos across my chest want a sidecar ride for me. We shared a fiery path And oh, after your seduction is complete, strip away the layers of conceit, the big reveal.
He might forget that the sweet coquette that he thought we met is not real. And then, there'd be more guys, and then there'd be a huge dance break, and eventually we get to the kick line that everyone has been waiting for 5 minutes later. And here we go. And 1, 2, and...
If you're smitten with a boy and you need a simple ploy, gotta tailor to his taste. If he's never gonna swipe, cause he's got another type, gotta tailor to his taste. If you're weary of playing the huntress and you're ready to be chased,
simple and easy to do. Be someone different and do not be you.
just adopt the traits
When your chance is slim,
of the girls he dates.
you're the one for him.
When you tailor to his taste.
Big dance number.
Oh, that is so fantastic. I hear Cole Porter all over it.
Exactly.
That is wonderful. Yes. So back to the kids. The kids are the focus of the show. Tell us about Henry and his infatuation with a certain girl in the high school.
Yeah, so the three central characters, two of them are very concerned with how they're perceived. And the third, Henry, does not wish to be perceived. Henry is very happy to hide in the background, keep things smooth. He doesn't want to, make a fuss. And that makes it particularly difficult for him to talk to the girl that he is head over heels in love with, who is a flautist in the school band and someone he's admired from afar and is trying to finally work up the courage to talk to. Because there is now a clock on his crush as he perceives it. And that is what this song is about. So this is his establishing song.
Should we hear it? Oh, well,
Right.
and I'll just say a couple things
Yes.
real quick. Is like this song had mostly been written prior to this. Like we've made some lyrical edits again today. Super fun. So I might do old versions of the lyrics by accident. But what we were really able to spend a lot of time this week doing is the stuff that we haven't been in person to do, because we've collaborated a lot over the pandemic, but we've really been focusing on like the songs like that, where it's like this long 8-minute sequence that we have everything else planned out. Or like as soon as they make the fashion line, there's this whole musical sequence of people discovering it and then making dresses for it and being able to use the index cards and lay out those and talk through all these sequences has been like so incredible this week. But we figured we didn't want to see a 9-minute sequence of us playing all the characters. So yes, this is Molly Mazurowski, and they are in band warming up. So you'll hear some nice warm-ups that you would imagine being played by high school band instruments. Anything else?
That's it.
Good? All right, let's do it. I'm going to try to look at you as much as possible, but new lyrics, you get it. 8 a.m. and we're warming up in band. Second row, I see Molly raise her hand, pointing out that the trumpets missed an accidental. Molly's right, cause she always knows what's best. No one else is as smart or self-possessed. Then Molly flashes the smile that drives me mental. Oh, I gotta get to Molly Mazurowski before her orthodontist can. Cause once she gets those braces off, she can find a better man. It could be only weeks till there's no spittle when she speaks. So I gotta get to Molly now. 8:15 and her solo fills the air. One more year and she's bound to make first chair. But by then every guy will know she's transcendental. And I'll be just a weirdo with a drum when she's back popping corn and chewing gum. Going in while the metal's on is instrumental. Oh, I gotta get to Molly Mazurowski Obolensky before they realign her job. And suddenly her loveliness has everyone in awe. My odds are heading south with each improvement to her mouth. So I gotta get to Molly now. If I may speak with candor, you belong with me. Like you're the palette expander and I'm the key. 1:45 and I'm covering my kit. Molly cleans up torrential floods of spit. She's a thorough swabber because her flute's a rental. Gotta ask her now or I'll never see if a girl like that could like a guy like me. A sim for a smile flecked with half-chewed lentil. Oh, I gotta get to Molly Mazarowski before that snaggletooth unsnags. The only path ahead is through those dental zigs and zags. I can't afford to wait until a retainer seals my fate. So I gotta get to Molly now.
Yay! Hooray! Thank you, Kate and Dan. We end on an upbeat note. Give us your thoughts.
I love both of those songs. They're both so different, but they're so wonderful. And I love you guys as songwriters so much. I think you have such wonderful craft, and I'm so excited to see where this piece goes.
Thanks.
So I'll say the same
I
thing.
totally agree. I think it's
You go, sorry.
Go ahead. Okay, I'll go really fast. I just want to echo how great that was. I mean, I love like the phrasing, the musical lyrical phrasing. I thought was both so smart and so charming. And I love like retainer seals my fate, and I gotta get to Molly Mazarowski before her orthodontist. Is like fantastic.
Thanks. It was fun.
David?
Yeah, I just think the lyric writing is so smart, so clever and charming, and it's like the whole time I'm just always surprised by where the rhyme goes, which is really hard to do. And I was sort of amazed and like delighted the whole time by sort of every other line. It was just like I loved it. So really, really awesome.
Yeah, I really had a great time. And I was remembering many years ago being in high school when someone had a business of sewing fake Izod alligators onto sort of just generic t-shirts and selling them for like a whole lot of money. And how like everyone, I mean, it's such a fun world to summon. And I remembered, you know, that weird detail, but I love the rhymes too. That was really, really great. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's so fun to see you at the writer's home too.
It is.
Yeah.
And to hear it live was great.
It came to you this week. Fantastic. Well, this is a good time to thank our amazing donors who made all of these week-long residencies possible. Our whole summer of 9 week-long residencies, 20 writers supported 9 musicals. Those supporters are the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York State Council on the Arts, the underwriting supporters for Fashion Show, Alex Stace and Alyssa Burke, the lead supporters for Four Measures, Steve and Paula Reynolds. The lead supporter for Perpetual Sunshine and the Ghost Girls is the ASCAP Foundation Bart Howard Fund. So we thank all of our donors immensely. If anyone watching is interested in supporting these incredible writers, there is a link in the YouTube chat and also right below the YouTube. And we also want to make sure everyone saves the date for our 10th anniversary fundraiser, which is going to be on November 18th, and it will be virtual, so you can attend from anywhere and more details to follow. But please save that date. And we're wrapping up here. Any final words from the writers?
To hear all of your stuff, and I can't wait to like meet in person one day.
Same.
Same.
Thank you,
Same.
Kathy and
Thank you,
Marvin,
thank
for
you.
all your work.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy.
It was so fun to hear from everyone tonight.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.